How do you prepare yourself to become the Kli?
The midas, the first thing, the attributes. So emotional control, emotional maturity, to take control of how you interact with life. Because if we offend life, then our imagination is not going to see life friendly. And then we can't really integrate with life. We can't become our nature. So learning life, learning how people like to be interacted with, and knowing how to be civil in that sense, or even nice, friendly, kind, everybody in accordance with their level of evolution and their level of energy, that allows your own spirit to find peace within your environment. So that's the first step.
So it's really already lost.
Yes. Everybody that has nervous energy is suffering. They're not only lost, they're suffering. So even though on the outside they might look very tough, inside it's not pleasant to be them. Because nervous energy means that your brain is disrupted. It's constantly protecting itself from an enemy. You're constantly at war. And that's not good for the organism. That weakens us, ultimately. It weakens our creativity. It weakens our ability to be ourselves. Because creativity is not really creating. Creativity is expressing the deeper you and not expressing the programmed you, the conditioned you. So creativity is simply gaining access to your nature, which is much more deep, which is much more connected and intelligent than what you've been programmed to think. So gaining access to that gives you access to understanding life from many different perspectives.
Then why do you get rewarded when you change your nature?
You get rewarded when you can fit your nature in accordance with how humanity needs you to be right now. So even though your nature, let's say, might require you to shoot back at people as soon as they upset you, right? But because we're in an environment where that might happen, and if you shoot back, it's going to cause further disruption, it's going to cause more hell. So we have to learn, for example, in such a place, for the goodness of humanity, for the goodness of the universe, for the goodness of our own spirit, to control ourselves and to do what's right, what's ultimately going to bring more pleasure. Is that moment of holding yourself back going to be more painful than the pain that's going to be caused by the words that are going to be said?
Doesn't that directly link us back to what you said before about like that we're in flow, but we have these traumas that like we're in process along the way, so like our
Yes.
neshama or whatever was like burnt, so we're not
Exactly.
like flowing now. But so if you can maintain the self-control, but then you're taking yourself out of flow in order to do that.
That's right. So you're going to have to compensate for that, and for that you're going to get compensated also. It means you're going to have to find ways of calming yourself down or releasing that tension within you that you naturally wanted to release because you couldn't. But that's where you're showing that you actually have the right goal in mind, that you're working for the right purpose, that you recognize what you're trying to accomplish. And ultimately, that's going to cause your spirit to be more forgiving towards its own past and more understanding towards its own life. Because as you show to others, you're going to end up showing to yourself. So integrating with the spirit has to come from a place of coexistence. Otherwise, we're all going to be at it. Everybody's going to want to have their own spiritual reality inflicted on everybody else, and that can't work. So the first step to spiritual evolution is coming back to the unity of all of humanity, so that you don't become a danger as you try to develop your personal power.
And could I just clarify what you mean when you say like giving yourselves that time? That means like doing exercise or?
Yeah. In general, you should have a stress reduction formula that you do. At least, some time in the day should be spent just to reduce stress, because we know our lives, we know what we're going through, and we know there's going to be stress. So keeping yourself physically fit, doing whatever emotional work that you can do, or meditating, or running, or breathing exercises, or whatever it is. People like drawing, people like listening to music. Everybody knows themselves of what can bring their nervous system back into tranquility, back into balance after there's been a disturbance by some event or by some interaction. So this way, we're doing the universe's work of ridding the world of evil. Every time we do this, we took a little evil that could have continued living for eternity, and we killed it. So this is a very good thing to have on your resume.
Right, no, but I like that like, so then what do you do with that? So, right, you have those times in the day, that you release that stress.
Yes. If you come back, if you're already back to your normal senses, then you'll realize how silly it is, right? It's only as long as it's still agitating you that it seems to be very important. But it's only in the imaginary world that it's important, because we've gotten used to it, because we've seen everybody behave this way. It's a pattern that we've emulated from who knows when. So by making ourselves realize, after that, till you look back, you're always going to come to the conclusion that you did the right thing by being quiet. So it's just a matter of coming back to yourself, and then you sort of gain more access to your neshama. Your neshama doesn't want altercations, it doesn't want conflict.
I still don't know how to deal with like the intensity of knowing like the reality of the situation. So like knowing how every second, like how important, how in the future, you know, after whatever,
Right.
120, how we knew how precious this time
Yes.
is. So like, so how do you take that information without the intensity, or take the intensity without the pressure?
Usually we take life, usually we're not serious enough. Usually we're not serious enough about life. So it has to be emphasized so that the imagination even realizes that there's something here of importance. Many people go through their day and they think it's all just a big joke. They haven't even noticed that there's consequences to what they're saying, what they're doing, what they're thinking. They don't know that this is real. The more a person becomes good, the more a person becomes kind, this thought not only doesn't scare him, it doesn't intimidate him, it becomes his best friend. Because this brings him even more into the present. It makes him be able to be even more kind. It makes the stake so much higher, so he has the energy to do what's necessary. So the more a person comes into this way of thinking, this is the reality. So we want to merge with reality because reality is good. So even though sometimes when we get exposed to reality it seems intimidating to us, it's because we're the intimidating one. We are so far from reality that from our perspective it seems distant. But reality is just what we are. This is the truth. So the more we can absorb it, the more we're going to be able to live it properly.
Yeah, and then you get the energy,
Yes.
from the mitzvos, and that makes you happy, and happiness is like...
It builds, exactly.
Yeah.
So back to how to prepare yourself to become a kli.
Yes.
You said midos, but back then you said that they used the dam to prepare themselves, to guide them to go.
They use the physical mitzvahs to help them affect their midos. So now we still have the physical mitzvahs that we do, and these physical mitzvahs can help us affect our imagination so that it can understand there are different realities that it doesn't see, that it needs to be taken into account. So without having physical mitzvahs, people just assume that it is what it is what it looks like. But that's most certainly not the case. And so we have to wake up our imagination to see that there's much more to it than what it seems.
It says Derech Eretz Kodma LaTorah. Does that mean we should study the world before we learn Torah? Meaning, don't go to yeshiva yet, don't learn a Gemara. First understand how nature works, and then learn.
Derech Eretz is a form of behavior. It means that if a person doesn't know how to interact with life, there's no way he's going to understand the Torah. He's not even going to understand what it wants or why it's here. When a person learns Torah, more than the Torah is teaching him, the person is teaching the Torah in the beginning. Because the person is so far from understanding the perspective of the Torah that the words go in and have a completely different meaning in his mind. And so the more a person could adjust his heart and his mind to be on the right tracks, when he learns, it's going to be a different learning. He's going to understand what he's trying to accomplish and who he's trying to help. But as long as he doesn't understand that, he doesn't know where to emphasize, he doesn't know what comes before what, he doesn't know how to really put things in context.
When you said the reality, what do you mean by reality? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Reality simply means what the Creator created. That's reality. Now, what we think of it, that's our own imagination. That's what we've built. We've read books, we've listened to people, we've had our own thinking sessions, and we decided that this is what it is. But that's obviously not what it is. So there is a reality that we're interacting with that's real. That's what's allowing us to be here, and it's allowing us to interact. That intelligence is magnificent. And the more we can rely on that intelligence and gain access to its power, then we don't have to carry any weight. We can just use that force because that's what it's there for. That's how He created it. He wants us to manifest from that force.
So do we know what reality is?
We don't know. We know that it's here. We don't know how to define it because it's the one that's trying to define it is part of it. and he doesn't know how to define himself. So we just know that it's there, and that alone gives us the ability to interact with it, and we always do. We're constantly interacting with it, but while we're interacting with it, we're imagining things about it that are not real. So that we have to be aware of. Don't allow your imaginary conclusions to interfere with life, to cause you to hurt other people or to say the wrong things, because what's in your mind, that's your interpretation, that's not real. What's real is that you might cause somebody else to feel a certain way. That's real. So we have to distinguish between our opinions and how we think, we see things, and how they really are, and what's really happening.
So when you do mitzvahs and you don't know the reason for the mitzvah, does it?
So that's preparing the vessel. That's what it said. That's what he said about preparing a vessel. Is that by allowing yourself to do something, then you're showing yourself that there is something. Now, eventually, if there's intelligence in you, you're going to go look. So, what is this something? What am I doing? And that's going to cause you to understand that something. And the understanding is going to cause you to change your beliefs, your way of seeing life. So there's an evolution that's supposed to happen over here, so that we get the full benefit of a mitzvah. Right, but that's only when there's some type of a intelligence doing the mitzvah. If there's no intelligence doing the mitzvah, then it's just copying other people. That's like just a trait of the imagination, that what it sees, it does. But that's not really going to lead it to intelligence. There has to be that drive that's looking for the truth.
Which is why it's important when your kid says, why do I do this? And you shouldn't say, because that's what you're supposed
just
to
because, right? No, it's not a good idea. It's not going to help him feel excited about what he's doing. And that's ultimately what is going to drive his spiritual experiences. How does he feel about what he's doing? Not what is he doing. What is he doing is only a small part of it. But how does he feel about what he's doing? What does he think it means? All these things are going to drive the neshama of the malach that gets created by the mitzvah.
If a child doesn't want to do a mitzvah, let's say going to shul, they don't want to do it.
So don't create conflict, because if you're creating conflict, you're going to make him hate it. So he's a child, you're only supposed to do chinuch. And chinuch is not to teach children to hate mitzvahs. So whenever you're forcing it, you're already causing damage to his future spiritual development. We have to find ways of introducing things to children so that they want to do it, so they're excited. And that's unfortunately going to require us to be excited also.
You can't fake it, right?
With kids you can't fake it. With adults you can try, but with kids it's never going to work. Because the kids, they still see you for who you are. They're still nature itself.
They're still innocent.
They haven't been contaminated with all these thoughts, and they're not busy and distracted. They're right there looking at you. They can see all your bodies, all the signs, all the signals.
You said whatever makes me feel like I'm doing the right thing is the right thing, which then that will be my heaven. As long as I feel right about doing the right thing.
No, because you don't understand yourself yet. So what might seem to a teenager like doing the right thing will to any adult seem like suicide. So it is a certain level of development that the Torah expects a person to go through before he's even authorized to tell us what he thinks. Until then, he's not thinking. It's impulses, it's other people, it's traumas, it's all kinds of things that he can't distinguish within himself, and they might drive him to do the wrong things. So he has to first understand who he is. When he understands exactly how everything works, and then he says, this is what's best, that's when his neshama is talking. That's the real him.
So once you're honest with yourself.
It's not just honest with yourself. There's a wisdom here of how a nefesh works. How do you decide what to think? As long as you don't know that formula, then you don't understand yourself. Then there's other things, there's other forces thinking within you that you don't know. And they might influence how you decide. So you can think, I'm honest and I know.
What is the right thing to do? Like, how could I know?
There's only one thing. There's only one thing to do for us until we find the truth, is looking for the truth. So you have to look for people or for books or for methods of how you're going to figure out what is true. And as you go along, those people and those books will tell you what to do in order to gain access to what they have. And then eventually you'll get to see the Torah for what it is. And then if you understand yourself, then you know what you need to do. Until then, you have to believe others. But once you have an understanding of who you really are, then you'll know. And the things that might seem to you very important right now about should I do it, should I not do it, by the time you go through this process, it won't even be a relevant question anymore, because your whole view of life and your whole view of purpose and your whole view of others and everything is going to change. And that's really the point, is that only then are you ready to make your own choices.
For example,
So how can we guide teens or young, what can we expect that we can't expect them to have this inner voice that kind of guides them and that they can.
They do. Everybody has their inner voice. Otherwise, they wouldn't do anything. So the inner voice is alive. The question is, what do you tell that inner voice? And obviously, everybody's telling their inner voice different things, and that inner voice ends up saying different things and doing different things, and sometimes it regrets it, and sometimes it doesn't. But there's no real.
We expect from a child or a teen. You're saying it really takes a certain maturity to be able to.
It's not just a maturity. It takes a dedication of basically giving your entire life up, your entire identity, in order to know what it means to be human. Until then, there's all kinds of stuff running in your system that's completely wrong, that's completely off, and it will cause the thoughts to make mistakes, severe mistakes. Like if we asked any average person now to, let's say, run a country or something like that, they would end up making silly mistakes that's going to cause a lot of damage. So when you run a human being, you're running even more than in our imagination running a country. There's so much consequence to what we do and what we say and what we think that it's even more complex than running a country. So how do we expect somebody to just know that based on what he saw and what he heard from random people? It can't be true. It has to be that there's a way of really getting to the bottom of what's real, and only then will the intelligence be able to tell us what we're supposed to do. This is our Messiah. This is why we have the Torah. This is why this is a recipe for Nevuah. A recipe for Nevuah means the recipe to gain access to the intelligence that created life. And we have that in our DNA. We're enabled with that feature. We just have to figure out how to gain access to it.
And how can we? Do we have to be,
So the first level is perfecting our attributes. If we're not kind to everything and everybody, then the collective spirit is not really our friend yet.
So that's emotional maturity?
Also, yes.
Say it again, what?
I don't know.
Collecting our attributes? What does that mean?
Correcting attributes, emotions. Attributes is emotions, yeah, it's the same thing.
When you're connected with your neshama and your true thoughts, and then you're in a state of peace, and for sure your midos are better because you're okay.
Right.
But then you're thrown off by something, and now you can't access that anymore.
That's exactly what we're saying. You're going to lose access if your attributes are not the way that they should be. That's exactly it.
You're saying now that the search then is for the people who can teach us how to access the truth. I have my truth. I know I have everything in me that I need to know.
There's more truth. There's more truth than what any of us are aware. There's never a limit to truth. The truth is so deep and so vast and so infinite that nobody contains it. So our goal in life, just like when we were born, first we learn to talk and to walk and to do all the basic functions of what we need to do, and then we grow and then we learn the more advanced skills. Life never really stops. Society thinks that when we're 20, we're an adult and it's over, but that's not how life was created. We have to constantly improve our intelligence level, or our neshama is going to start feeling stagnant, like it's not doing anything, like it's not gaining insight. And so a real spiritual journey involves daily improvement, daily heights. So if a person has gotten to that place where he can get that from within, good for him. But most people will need guidance.
So if it's if it keeps going, how can a person feel full? Because there's always more, so you have this restless feeling of always needing.
Because you're imagining Gashmias. Ruchnius doesn't work like this. Ruchnius is the opposite. As you have it, it's feeling satiated. It's that feeling of feeling satiated that actually makes you desire more. You're so satiated, you're so filled.
And desire more at the same time.
Because it's spiritual. Because you're in the spiritual, more is less. In the spiritual, the simplifying of the self and the realizing your true nature so that all of your energy can be in that one center, that's actually being the most, by just being one. So it's very different than the physical. The physical is a pursuit of many. The spiritual is a pursuit of unity.
So then if you get to that place of one,
yes,
there is nothing more.
Yes, because that one goes deeper. Suddenly you see
How can one go deeper? What do you mean?
It's a good question. Write it down and ask it yourself every day. and you'd come and tell me. It goes deeper, it does.
It goes more or it goes deeper?
Deeper.
It's not more.
It goes deeper. Once it's one, it goes deep. In the beginning, there's many. In the beginning, you're thinking about what you're going to do and where you're going to go and what that person said and what the other person said. There's so much of you in there that you can't even find yourself. But then when there's one, the one gets deeper and deeper.
The rut zone, you're saying?
Not just the Ratzon, it's a certain recognition of who you are and how you're connected to everything that is beyond even thinking. It's just a feeling. It's just that your entire body is engulfed in a certain energy and you're experiencing that as your reality. And that energy can go deeper and deeper, more and more subtle levels of intelligence.
You know how there's the tam and the chacham? So is this the tam, like the simple guy?
This is the chacham and the tam. You have to be a big chacham to know how to be a tam. You have to understand what we're dealing with properly in order to be simple. So as far as the world, he's not sophisticated. He doesn't have to be...
I can't hear anything.
As far as the world... As far as the world is concerned, he doesn't have to know how to interact with people in a very sophisticated way. But when it comes to himself, he has to be very, very sophisticated to understand the inner workings of who he is. So in business, he might be very clumsy. He might not even have any money. But between him and himself, he's in charge. He knows exactly what's happening. So a person like that, he's a tam and he's a chacham at the same time.
Do you ever have a question yourself, like about life?
I have so many questions. The deeper you go, the more questions. But it's not in a way that it's disturbing. It's not a question where you feel you have to understand. I get it. I don't understand, and that's fine. Because I've seen enough. He's already proved to me that he's reliable, and that's it. That's all I really needed.
God wants to be me, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it the opposite?
You don't know how to be God because you don't know who He is. So you can't want to be Him yet. But He knows who you are. God knows who you are. He knows your potential. He knows what He created. So He knows what He wants to be in you. You've never seen that. You've never seen your potential. So you don't know really what you're looking for. You're looking blindly. You're saying, God, give me insight into what I really am so I can become you. So you don't really know what He prepared for you. He knows what He prepared for you.
So are inspired to be God?
You inspire it to follow the way that He created for you so that you can evolve into being the deepest and highest version of yourself. When you are that, we would say that you and God are linked. His desire of you and your version of you match.
The Seichacham, right?
Right, that a person is a Merkava l'Shechina, that a person could be the one that carries the divine light within him because he has access to an intelligence that's pure, that just wants to be kind to the world. So everybody can use him as a mirror. He doesn't really care about himself. It doesn't mean anything to him that he's him. He's just one of the many, and they all need to have a better life.
What's the difference in a non-Jew and a Jew then?
It takes a lot of imagination to draw all that out of what he's saying.
Right.
Well, it sounds like every other Chasidic Sefer, and they all
So
sound
true.
the same, but they all just, but to draw all that out of those words.
Those words mean that we just never knew. They never told us what the words mean. And when you'll see what the Chimish means, forget about that. That's just, it's like a different universe. I don't even know what it means.
Right, but when you say all that and I read what you said, it makes me wonder, like, did he understand all that?
He did, because otherwise he wouldn't know to write specifically these words. He wasn't just some silly guy playing with words. He knows what he's writing, and they make sense only on this level. It's just that until now, it didn't make sense.
Funny thing is you think the Chumash is the simplest, like but then you learn like
No, everything prepares you for the Chumash. Everything prepares you for the Chumash, and most people never make it to the Chumash.
Rashi must have been a genius.
Rashi knew all of Shas, and there wasn't Shas like today in a book. He was going through them, and in order to look something up, it took a few minutes. You understand? There's a very different reality they lived in, and he knew it all by heart, including all the Midrashim and all the Toseftas and the Brises, and he brings them like this, Those are the people back then who still understood what we're dealing with.
HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world to manifest himself in human beings. Why make a difference between a goy, a non-Jew, and a Jew?
This happened by the Chet of Adam Rishon. Originally, there wasn't supposed to be any difference. All of humanity was supposed to be one. But after there was a problem, a small portion of humanity was chosen to suffer so that they can run through this decree faster and bring to the world the light faster. Klal Yisrael suffers for humanity, yes. And humanity suffers for Klal Yisrael because we're the heart of Klal Yisrael. So just like we're the heart of the world. So just like the heart would suffer for the other limbs, so if any limb hurts, the heart gets weaker. The same way Klal Yisrael with the world. It's one organism.
Does that make us better than everybody else?
It gives us a certain sensitivity and it gives us much more responsibility.
But not better.
Better, I mean, if sensitive means that you can appreciate more what's happening. You can gain access to places that without that sensitivity you wouldn't have. Being sensitive is ultimately the gift of intelligence. The more sensitivity, the more intelligence. Sensitive simply means that you can discern very subtle things that others don't have the capacity to discern. So this gives you access to tremendous knowledge and wisdom if it's used correctly.
And what was the purpose of creating man and woman? Just make one being. Why do you complicate everything for with women and men?
I don't know why he does what he does. You gotta ask him.
We also did end up with the first woman.
Right, but when we start asking questions about the design, it's already, we need to understand the basics of how we do it first.
In order to ask questions about it,
Yes.
you need to do many steps.
You need to know a lot of things.
That was the Malamato. This is the Malamato. You're
Yeah.
asking questions of the design.
Yeah, some design questions you can understand, some you can't.
Right.
But yeah, it is what it is.
That you can line up, like you can make a
We
whole
can
list.
safely assume that he's a lot smarter than you, and if he did it, he knew what he was doing. Because he created your brain. So he must have at least any intelligence that's inside your brain.
What's the purpose of creating other planets if man never ever has anything to do with them?
Man has to do with every single planet, every single moment.
Pluto? I've never
Pluto is sending you rays that you're ingesting at this very moment. No different than the sun or any of the other celestial bodies that are actually creating your reality. You wouldn't have any of the organs without the stars. How would you look? It's going to make your experience a lot more significant if you have the sensitivities to know how to interact with these things. But at the moment, it's not a big difference. Only once it becomes relevant to you because you see shifts in your energy and in your perception and your experience, and you don't know what to attribute them to unless you understand what's happening. So all our organs are constantly interacting with everything that's happening up there. That's the wisdom of astrology that Avraham Avinu was an expert at. So this is a language that the ancients understood, and it helps us understand the wisdom of the Creator. How he arranged everything so that we can be us.
So if we learn more of the wisdom of the Creator, then we ourselves become more wise
Yeah.
in our midos?
We become more like the Creator because we are a mini Creator. Whatever is happening in the celestial bodies, whatever the shape of the whole zodiac, is who we are. This is why our body looks the way that it does, and this is why we act. No, that's not the beginning. That's not in the beginning.
Don't worry about the stars, sweetie.
Yes, I think that's all you got to do for now. We're part of everything. We're part of the universe. But when we speak about specifically our shape, this has to do with the zodiac. The zodiac was designed specifically for this purpose, to create man. The signs, the 12 signs, and the 7 stars that are visible to the eye. That was what was included originally in this wisdom in the ancient world.
Why does Hashem need to create such a big? I mean, if I have a piece of paper, let's say an A4 piece of paper, and I want to draw a man, I just draw a man like this on the paper. Why do I got to make a little tiny man and a whole bunch of other things?
I think I figured this one out. He didn't have paper.
You know what I'm saying?
We don't. It's a waste of time. Our only thing to try to figure out is what did he create and how does it work. There's no purpose in trying to outsmart the one that created this. He knows how to do it and what to do, and he already did. He's not asking for advice. He's not trying to pitch a company and we're going to see how it's going to work out. He already did it. So now our job, as we are experiencing it, is to understand what is happening. The why we can leave for later.
We have to accept that he couldn't think of a simpler way to do it.
It didn't, maybe simple wasn't the goal. Maybe we're looking at it wrong. Maybe complexity is what makes it fun.
Could have made a different goal also.
I mean, I can see how if we were having a good time over here, we would appreciate the complexity. It's only because we're trying to like survive and we're afraid of everything that we want it to be simple. So he's coming at it from a whole different angle. He knows what he's doing.
Chill with the complexity.
Just find your simplicity within the complexity.
I'll take it.
Anything
Can I
complex,
ask you something
I'll take
clearly?
yours.
There's
Not gonna
differences
be
between men and women, so in what you're teaching, like, does everything always apply? Like, where do we?
We're discussing humanity as a species. I mean, obviously, we all have different backgrounds and we all have different information, and we all have to we have to play different roles. But how we work inherently is very, very similar. Our internal workings of the brain and the heart. So even though there's different pronunciations, so things are more pronounced in the different genders, but they're still the same concepts, they're the same ideas that drive us. So even more so, by understanding each one themselves individually, we can start understanding the other gender better, so that we can know each one what it is. But all of us require simply introspection, to see who we are, to open the gift. You know, we've been given something which works a certain way, and if we understand it correctly, we can take charge of how it works, and that's the goal. So we can simply be ourselves. So that's universal.
Yeah, and the neshama is a female, no?
The
It's
neshama can be,
feminine.
yeah, you can call it that. It all depends on the relationship, who we're talking about.
I disagree.
No, I think you were saying the word neshama? No, because he was talking about the neshama as she. You refer her to she.
You usually call it a she, but in the spiritual world, it always depends on the interaction. Who's giving and who's receiving. So when you're talking about something higher than the neshama, it will be a she. Like referring to the neshama versus God, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But if you're referring to the neshama versus, let's say, the nefesh, the part that's inside your body, then the neshama would be like the male, the intelligence that's in charge, and the nefesh would be the female, the one that's taking the orders from within the body. So it all depends on the interaction. This is the nature of, it's the physical nature of how he created it. Malachim are the creations that we ourselves create mostly. So there's the basic malachim that create the structure of what we want and why we want it. This relates to the stars and the signs that we spoke about, that they create within man certain desires, certain impulses, certain understandings, certain rhythms of life, of how he's going to work. So that part, those malachim, are then covered with our individual interpretation of what they are, of what they mean to our lives. So for example, let's say there's a malach that's called hunger. So we all get hungry, but we all experience hunger very differently, and we have different associations of what hunger is going to bring to our mind. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Are we afraid of it? Do we like it? Do we look forward to it? Are we avoiding it? All this is already our own malachim that we created as a cover to the original malach called hunger. So these associations are what create our relationships with everything. So every time something takes place in your experience, a malach is created. And that malach is going to interact with how you're going to see that thing in the future.
What about the malachim that were before people, that was part of the nasa?
So these are the original koiches. So for example, if we look in man, certain parts of man are less integrated into the experience than others. And this is how the malachim basically express their opinion about how qualified we are to exist. So for example, if somebody is not in a good relationship with hunger, then we would say that the angel of hunger says this person shouldn't be created, because he's just annoying him constantly. Him and hunger don't get along. So the same it is for all the other forces within us. Some of them are more easily integrated into our experience, and they're the happy malachim. With them we get along. And some of these malachim are some of them have even been banished in exile since ancient times, that we don't interact with those forces in a natural way because of damage that happened in history. And all that is all our relationships with these malachim, with these powers, with these forces, and what it means to humanity to have access to these forces. Yeah, there's a lot of upset malachim out there. So that you're playing with the imagination. Sometimes you can convince the imagination to allow itself to open up to scary thoughts that usually you wouldn't think. And then those are interactions with the dark side. So
That really exists, or that we make up?
You're not making anything up. Every thought you have, you're not really making it up. It's recycled spiritual material that you're interacting with. And the same goes for that. So when you open yourself up saying, I'm anticipating an interaction with the dark side, then your imagination says, okay, let's see what happens. And then a tiny feeling or a tiny sensation could turn into a huge fear and a rage, and that's a real interaction with the dark side. So we have a lot of power how we direct our experience.
How could a dark side exist if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is totally good?
Because we created it. When we are angry, we create dark malachim.
We can't create something that He
gave us permission to, but He didn't create the anger. He created the potential for anger. We're the ones that get angry. But that means that He gets angry as in the relationship with humanity gets frustrated. And that's just like we discussed before. When we don't understand ourselves appropriately, the frustration within us is called Hashem is angry with us. Because it's your nature that's getting upset. So the Elokim is saying, I don't agree with you.
The balance is interrupted.
So our thoughts create.
Your thoughts create reality. No, nothing comes into this world without your thoughts. Everything you've ever said or done is because first there were thoughts that caused a desire, a realization, or a purpose, and then it comes out, and you're not alone. Everybody's like that, which means that the world of thought runs everything that happens in this world. It's the intermediary between the neshama and reality.
So, what tells us that we are normal and not the guy who sits in a mental hospital and thinking differently?
Well, the truth is that nobody is normal. The reason people are in mental hospitals is because they've forgotten now not to be violent. But it has nothing to do with being normal.
So what tells us that we're right?
Nobody is right. Everybody has their opinions about the truth. Like we discussed, there's a truth and we can all have our opinions. What we're trying to do is have, at least if we're going to have opinions, to have friendly opinions. Opinions that don't cause harm, cause damage. So in the meantime, we can figure out the truth as best as we can. And as we get closer, then we'll be more accurate. But if we cause damage because of our opinions, then we're not going to ever find the truth. Because the truth won't show itself to us if we're offending life.